This is Josh from Chicken Fox Productions, welcoming another episode of Memories of Us podcast. Tony welcomes a long-awaited guest, Angela Talent, host of Relatively Damaged podcast. Today, Angela describes her loss of mobility and what that meant to her as a parent with disabilities.
I want to welcome everybody to another episode of Memories of Us. Today we have Angela Talent. She is the host of Relatively Damaged for damaged parents, and she has an amazing story. And I want to say thank you today, Angela, for being on the show. But before we start, I want to give an amazing shout out to some of our grief support networks across the board. And today I want to give a shout out to Dads of Loss. They are grief support for men who have lost children. So if you guys need to, please reach out to them. Fathers, you're not alone, and you have support out there. So by all means, reach out. Angela, how are we doing today?
I'm fantastic. I'm just glad to be here. I feel honored to be on your podcast.
Well, it's an honor to have you on, and you're doing amazing things with your podcast, Damaged Parents. I know you had me on there one time before. Amazing host. To anybody out there who has a story, reach out to Angela. But it's her story that got her to doing it is amazing. So I'm gonna hand it over to you, Angela. Tell people about yourself.
Yeah, so my name's Angela. No, I'm just kidding. You already know that.
That's okay. We're just gonna do that over again.
No, if you see me on the street, you could probably compare me to a T-Rex. You know, I've got arms; they just don't work very well, right? So, this is a video podcast, so I can certainly show the audience that my left hand is literally stuck in this this brace, and it's in that shape, so it's stuck like that. And then I've got about that much range of motion on my other hand, and some pain in my legs. So I have a rare disease called, or I'm not sure if it's a disease. It's complex regional pain syndrome, and it started about 10 years ago. So literally just typing. I was typing. There's a sharp pain, some bruising. Most people would have thought that I thought. So I guess I'm most people, right?
Hey, sometimes.
Yeah. I thought it was, just a simple injury. I'd go to the doctor, we'd get it handled, and it would be done, and, move on with life. Well, that wasn't the journey. That was not my journey. Before I knew it, my hand would, my left hand, which was the one that had the initial injury, would blow up like a club hand. When you take one of those gloves in the doctor's office and you blow it up and you play with it. Well, that's what my hand looked like, one of those hand balloons. And then it would turn red, and then it would swell back down, and it would turn blue. And then my nails were changing. And sometimes they were super hard. Sometimes they're paper thin. There was no rhyme or reason. And I'll never forget looking at my hand going, wow, this is really fascinating that the human body does this. I don't understand it, but it's fascinating. And of course, still thinking I was going to get quote unquote fixed. And that did not happen. So within a few weeks, I was working one-handed. My right hand started having problems. They believed it was overuse. So from the overuse, then I had to take breaks. Mind you, I was still like one of the top people in the office, a very hard worker, just very determined. And it was really hard to take those breaks. But I had to. I needed to, because I wanted to heal. And about 2 months later, they said, well, sorry, you can't do your job to the full capacity for what we hired you for. So we're going to let you go. And I was absolutely devastated. So from there, it was just a downhill struggle for a while. And I say downhill because I really went into deep depression, very sad. It took I want to say it was a little less than a year before I couldn't drive. So I lost the grip strength in my right hand, and just was no longer safe. Mind you, I had two young kids that were 6 and 8, and I was a single mom. So it was really hard to find value. And the only way that I found value was by believing that I guess maybe the best way for me to put it is I took on the identity of I will be the best mom I can be, and that will be who I am. And because that was all I could do. And then as far as when I started getting caregivers, the next best thing was, well, if I can't be out in the world helping change or bring value to the world, then the best thing I can do is help the people who come into my house and listen and be their emotional support, which turned out great. I got to cheer on some caregivers, which was really fantastic. And clearly I have a big smile. So it brings me joy that I was able to do that.
I mean,
Fast forward to, the struggle. I remember crying. My mom, I had lived with my mom when I became disabled, and she decided, so I was supposed to take care of her. And she decided so I was taken off of work in May, I want to say, and by June or July, she was deciding she was going to move to Texas. So the idea that I could no longer take care of her was I think devastating, and I think she had to leave for herself, because it would have been devastating for her to stay with me. All of the plans changed. It was horrible. So, I found myself disabled, single mom in an apartment on my own, which was fantastic. And then had to get caregivers. And, I cried a lot. I just remember, I think my youngest was home one day sick, and I was just in my bedroom crying, and she walks in, and that's hard, because as a parent, I didn't think my kids should be responsible to help me through those feelings. And that particular child has a super big heart, and she has her own struggles, and I'm still grateful for that moment, because I remembered in that moment, that's right, I'm still a mom, and I can do this.
Yeah. Yes,
this is hard. I can do this. And so fast forward 10 years, it's been 10 years now.
Okay.
And, those pits of despair definitely were there. It took a few years before my legs flared up. So I'm limited in how far I can walk. And, I have a wheelchair that I get to use periodically. Okay. And, it is. So in October of this last year was the first time I had ever felt shamed for being disabled. Mind you, I had worked in the medical field. I'm a pretty good advocate for myself, which I think is really important. It's important to be an advocate for yourself, especially in the medical field. But in October, I had this caregiving company that the regional managers realized that the local manager had okayed me, knew that we needed to get my kids to and from school and things like that. My oldest, I think, was driving by that time, or almost driving. And because of COVID and all that great stuff, she hadn't gotten her license. I can't remember the timeline very well. But they came into the house and said, no, you can't take your kids to school. You can't take them to the doctor's office. You can't do this. No, they're not your hands. So my understanding was a caregiver was always here to help me be a full human being.
Right.
And this company came in and they're like, well, yeah, the guidelines for CMS, which is Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services, basically say that I'm to be treated like I'm gonna say an animal because, I feed my animals, I clean my animals,
Right.
and, make sure their bedding is clean. We do that as a society. And that's basically what they were saying they would do for me. So I was all of a sudden in a position where, oh my gosh, I'm bad for being disabled. I can't be a mom. Are you kidding me? That makes no sense to me. Now I can't take them to the doctor and I can't take them to school, and heaven forbid they want to go to the grocery store with us. They can't come. It made no sense. And even the doctors were surprised. I was like, were you aware of this? And they're like, no. I said, just so you know, this is depending on how they read the guidelines. If they read it as a maximum, this is all your patients are going to get. If they read them as a minimum, then you've got a good company who sees the human side of things. So I literally had to go to bat and argue and explain, look, I should not be a hostage in my home, in my own home, for the simple reason that I have a disability. That is not okay. I should not feel like I'm on house arrest. I haven't done anything wrong. You're limiting me to the grocery store, the doctor's office, in short periods of time for religious services, and that's it. When do I get to go out for mental health time?
Right.
When do I get to do those things? So it's been, luckily I was able to switch companies. I wasn't limited, but I did find out that IHSS, so that's in-home support services, which is what most parents don't have the money to hire outside companies.
Yeah.
And neither do I, but I had private insurance. If I were on IHSS, absolutely not. They would not help me in any of those parenting tasks. I was not asking them to parent for me, mind you. I was literally asking for them to help me in my parenting tasks. So that's when I started thinking about Damaged Parents, the website. And the funny thing is, I don't know about you, but I always, in my mind, I go back to, me having a disability, right? I go back to, I'm going to do what I know how to do. And that's right. I can't write.
Yeah.
I cannot write.
Right. I was just there, man. I was just there. I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And then I realized, that maybe that was outside of my boundaries. And so it was.
Yeah.
it was an eye opener. I was like, oh, well, back to the drawing boards, but no, I get it though. I definitely get it, because we all go through these journeys, man, and listening to it, because, when we think about damaged parents, a lot of people can, paint different pictures about it. And being a parent yourself, and now you have this disability, which I think that you're doing amazing with. So congratulations, and keep moving forward. Doing the things that you're doing is such a inspiring. It's so inspiring, because you're showing people that no matter what, it is possible to do these things, and you're coming out the door just making leaps and bounds. Now, I do have a question. Now, when we talk about your disability, what is the percentage of people in the world right now who have this particular disability?
Like 1%. And of the 1%, I think it's 50% of that 1% get it to mirror across, where it mirrors across the body.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, or it mirrors down, like usually it's either or. It's so it's even more rare that it's in all four extremities, which is great if it had been the lottery.
Right.
I would have won the lottery multiple times, right? Because if there's 7 billion people in the world and there's 1%, I could have won the lottery a bunch of times, man.
This is very true, man.
Yeah.
Just in a different way, but I wish it was a little bit more positive for you. But man, so it has changed your life, right? And you've had to readjust everything. Yeah. So now where you're at right now with your kids and everything, how is it, is it, I know it's different. So how different is it?
How different from when I was capable?
Yeah.
Maybe, or.
Yeah.
That's actually a really great question. And what comes to mind is that that was one of the thoughts I had when I started Damaged Parents is what's the difference between now being a parent and being a parent before my disability? And I realized I had the same insecurities, and being a parent had nothing to do with my physical capacity. In that, yes, being a parent, you think, oh, I'm going to help them with their homework. Well, I could still sit there and walk them through their homework. I just had to get very good at articulating and using words and learning to understand where they were coming from. And sometimes that didn't happen, and that's okay. I think for me, I am a better parent because of my disability. And let me explain that just a little bit. I think before my disability, emotions happened, and I didn't really think about them. I think they just were there. I wasn't as invested in understanding them. With my disability and with my pain, I had to figure out what's happening. Is this my pain talking, or am I really upset at something they did? And I had to slow down my response to anything that the kids did, which was hard. And I'm learning now, which of course I didn't know 10 years ago, that parenting with leaving room enough for them to say no is much harder than the way I think I thought I was going to parent, which was there's a right and a wrong way to do things.
Yeah.
And they need to know that. And that's not true. Not true. I mean, I think I used the word fix when I initially stated or was talking about my disability, that I would be fixed.
Right.
I don't think a fix exists in the way that I used to think a fix exists. I think sometimes that a physical recovery is not what God has intended for us. Sometimes the recovery is in healing the mind and the emotions, and learning to be okay with what I've been given. Do I like it? No. Would I like to be able to just go on a drive and, go to the ocean anytime I want, or take the kids on an overnight somewhere? Totally. It's just not what I've been given. And that's not what I have. So what can I do with what I have? It's very different. I guess in some ways it makes me think, one of my friends has a daughter. I can never remember the disability, but she doesn't speak. Her hands are a little deformed. And when I think of her, I think she clearly knows everything that happens inside her mind. I think her mind is clear, because when things aren't going the way she wants, she very clearly acts up. And when things are good, she's very clearly happy. In fact, something I didn't realize that I learned through one of my interviews with someone with cerebral palsy, which is not what she has, but anyway, I interviewed this gentleman with cerebral palsy, and the realization, he said, our minds are fine. We just can't get our words out. So how many times do we look at people and make a judgment and not realize they know exactly what's going on? If we just try and appease them with oh yeah, instead of really trying to understand, they know we don't understand. We should, what's wrong with going, no, I don't understand. Can you repeat that until I get it? And then if they get frustrated, fine, let them have that.
Yeah. That's amazing. Because it's like, like we said before, God always has a plan for us. And sometimes he has to do something to bring that plan together. And a lot of times we don't like it. I would say 98% of the times we don't like how that plan comes together, because it involves some major changes within ourselves, and listen to your story, I can relate that because when you say things like losing your ability to use your hands, like I often think about the grieving aspect of it, because you
Yeah.
you grieve the movement, right? You know, the what ifs. What if I still had him? Or what if I wasn't in this situation? So it's so amazing because I just got into a conversation with someone like that before, and he had lost both of his legs, and then horrific biking. He was doing the Tour de France, and he went out, and a car came in the street and hit him.
Oh,
So it
ouch.
paralyzed him from the waist down. So thinking about the same thing, like similar but very, very different. Like yours was
Yeah.
unasked for, as well as his, but his was caused by an accident. Yours was caused by genetics.
We're just gonna say God. I don't know.
But I know, right? It's kind of hard to put it into words, right? Like you don't want to say genetics because I don't know. We need to figure
I don't
out a
know how
word
much
for
of
that.
this syndrome is genetic as
Right.
much as it was that they know that when the injuries can cause it, which is why when you get when people get sprained ankles or sprained hands or
Mhm.
whatever, it's very important to keep moving and not shy away from movement, because we want to keep people not from getting, I mean, you can't stop yourself from getting CRPS, but the sooner they know that there's a problem, I think maybe the better, because you would follow a different path
Right.
of recovery.
Now, does it just keep progressing over time?
So some people get really lucky and the pain burns out.
Okay.
I am not one of those. Mine tends to stay. So like, let's say I'm just going to use the screen with my hands. So let's say my pain levels were here, the top and the bottom, right? And then they just shrink a little bit. So my ups, my highs and lows aren't as bad as they used to be.
Mhm.
But sometimes they do go back up and then they come back down. And then so it just depends. And yeah, unfortunately, I'm not one of those people where it burned out. I wish, that would have been a different journey.
That's very
And
true.
I don't get to control that. So
That's very true. Now, how did you get into podcasting? What was your, because you have an amazing
gosh darn it.
podcast. So I know, right? No, you don't get away with that one. So,
Yeah,
how did you get into it? What was the journey like getting into that?
Yeah, I missed that part of the story when I was doing my opening there for you. Remember I said, I thought, I'm going to blog and I'm going to use my, I'm going to write and tell these stories. So basically I called up an old coach of mine who actually had polio as a child. So I had this coach, fantastic coach. He walked with a limp. He used a lost strand crutch. One of his hands was deformed. And this is a softball coach, mind you. So he would throw the ball up in the air with the same hand he had the bat in and then hit the ball. And anyway, I called him up and I interviewed him. And I realized in that moment when I'm interviewing him on the phone that there's no possible way I could take notes. And I had to remember everything. So I did my best. And we dictated it out and emailed it over to him, and they had to correct some things. And I realized during the phone call, this is not going to work. And I had met a gal who did podcasts. So I called her up. I'm like, what's up with this podcasting thing? And she's like, well, you can use Zoom and you could just have it uploaded to Anchor. And then if there's editing, it can be done through Audacity. And at that time, I was like, well, I talked to my caregivers. My caregivers were willing to help. In fact, one of the very first interviews is one of my caregivers. So and we did put that podcast up, and I put it up for posterity. It was important to me that the very first ever interview on tape, that I put that up as episode number 1, so that I don't know, it's just important to me. One of those things, like I want that documented. This was the first one.
Okay. That's cool.
But so we learned, the caregivers and I learned together, I sit right beside them, how to use the programs. And then, so now they get excited. They're like, hey, is there a podcast to edit today? You know, they get excited and then they get inspired and they love getting to the quotes out, you know, from the transcription. Because we actually found a program, gosh darn it, what's Descript, where it transcribes it and you can, so that you can see it's not perfect, but it does help me because I have to sit back and watch to see the words and then edit it from there, because then I can say, no, get that word or get this word, you know. I think all of us have brains that work differently, and there are probably some really amazing editors that can just use like the free Audacity tool, you know, app. I don't see that way though. I don't see through hearing. I see through reading. I've always been a reader. I love reading.
And it works out, right? Because I've never used Audacity. I think the program that we use is Adobe. And so we can do everything from there. But it's the same thing. Like, I'm a visual person. I'm definitely a visual person. So I sit here when all the editing is going on. Now I don't say too much because that's not my place. But I've been looking, you know, I'm constantly looking, what about this? And oh man, you know how many times I get kicked out of the studio?
Well, I mean, the thing with the caregivers is they're literally my hands. So
right.
I've got to be here, which is great, because it would be really easy, I think, to not stay engaged, to be like, oh, well, that's their job, and then just, you know, go read a book or something else. And but if I were capable, what would I be doing? I'd be right here. I would be right here doing it. So I love that I have caregivers that don't take it personally, that I'm sitting here and they realize that they're here to be my hands, and that it's an honor. And I mean, I don't know, there's also learning to work so closely with someone, learning to have that communication, to say when, you know, something's going on, or if I'm struggling, or they tell me if they're struggling or having a tough day. You know, it's really, you know, they always tell caregivers, and they tell us too, don't connect with your caregiver. There's no possible way. If you have a good caregiver, you're connecting. There's no possible way, if you spend that much time in that close of proximity with someone, that you're not going to connect. And if you don't connect, it's problematic. You know, I've had to really be an advocate for myself when it comes to caregivers, because they will send people that will refuse to do as I need. Or I've had people just sit there. I'll say, I need you to please grab this for me. And they'll literally just sit there and look at me, or be disrespectful, or bring their personal, I had a gal, it was very unfortunate, domestic violence, child, you know, but she brought all of that into the house and started talking about it in front of my kids, which I could understand if down the road, but it was like the first day I met her, and she's revealing to me this. I mean, it was horrendous. It was terrible. I don't wish it on anyone. And yet it still wasn't appropriate. There's got to be, people have to earn that safe relationship.
Yes.
And a lot of times caregivers, unfortunately, they haven't grown up in the environment in which they have the capacity to learn how to build trust and have safe relationships. It's really sad. And it's also a very easy job to get. So someone's struggling, I'll just go do caregiving. You can almost tell when it's a calling for someone and when it's not.
Yes. And I'm glad that you said that too, because I've seen it and I've heard the stories about it, but I've heard the both, you know. I just heard that story from you, man. I'm sorry that you had to go through that. But you also hear the ones that are the good ones. Like, you know, you have caregivers now that, you know, you guys are on the same page. And so I hear the stories about that as well. And I think it's when we come to caregiving, it's good to have somebody that's their passion. but it's also good to have somebody that has that lived experience as well, that have walked that walk. Because for me, I guess having someone that I can relate to, as sad
Yeah.
as that is, but
Yeah.
being a man, having to have walked the walk I've walked and experienced these things, I understand the struggles I've had to go through. The biggest thing that really helped me out was having other men that was around me that understood, that have had that
Yeah.
lived experience. I couldn't go to a counselor,
Yeah.
like caregiver counselor. I kind of put them both in the same category because they both do the same thing. Sometimes you get ones that just stand there and look at you. Like,
Well, I think it comes down to, the caregiver works best for you.
right.
Have you ever seen that movie Monk?
I have.
Okay, or the show Monk. I love Monk.
Oh my God.
That's what
Yes.
I envision the caregiver relationship should look like. You know what? Yeah, you're going to tell me when I'm getting a little out of hand, and I'm going to tell you when I think you're getting a little out of hand. At the end of the day, though, we're going to help each other be better.
That's true. See, I always related mine to the show The Mentalist.
Okay, I know I saw it, but I don't remember much of it.
Yeah, see, that guy's always into stuff and everything, but he was good to be around people because he was very intelligent, but he just had a way of just taking off everybody. Not intentionally, right? Not intentionally,
Yeah.
but most of the time it was. And when it was just hilarious. But when it wasn't intentional, it was like, did you not understand what oh my God. So I relate that to some of the people I've had to help guide me as well. I've had those that, especially counselors or therapists that have come back and they want to talk. And then when I ask them, go, well, what's your experience? I was like, no, man, come on. But then you get those ones that were just, I love the ones that was not afraid to say, hey, this is what's going on. But it was the way that they said it. At the end of the day, we were laughing, and there was just a certain, like you said, finding someone that fits you.
Yeah, I don't know when you're going to post this, but even just yesterday, we released a bonus episode of Was I Assaulted, where I interviewed a therapist, May Alarad, who wrote a book, who had been sexually assaulted as a child and then turned into the perpetrator, and then later in life was assaulted quite a few more times. And I think the quote that we posted today in relation to that was in promotion of that episode today still was something to the effect of, can they ask him why he raped me and not why I was where I was or why I was wearing what I was wearing.
Mm-hmm.
I think when I posted that episode, it was just, when I interviewed it, to have a therapist say, yes, I was there in the depths of hell for them. And I'm reaching out so that other people know that we've been there too. I think that's courageous. Right. I think it's fantastic. And I think we're really lucky that we're in this world right now where we're starting to recognize that the strength is in the struggle and not in ignoring the struggle.
That's very true. And I want to touch a little bit more about that, but I want just to get a premise of what your podcast is about. Explain what the niche is on it.
Right. So the idea is that we're all damaged in some way, every single one of us. If someone once told me that no child escapes childhood unscathed. So if you think about for a minute, no child escapes childhood unscathed. Okay, so that means everyone has been damaged in some way, shape, or form. And then I wanted to share those stories, right? So there's this divisiveness that is happening in the world. I'm right, you're wrong. I'm white, you're black, whatever. That where we're only recognizing the differences and not the similarities.
Mm-hmm.
What my podcast aims to show through story form is that we're all similar, that any of the episodes that you listen to,
Mm-hmm.
you could say, oh, I've had that feeling. Maybe you haven't been there. You've had that feeling though, and you can relate and go, oh, ouch, that hurts. It's almost like walking for an hour in someone else's shoes.
Right.
And then the empathy and understanding that comes from that. Now, I can look around, and even just since starting this podcast, I thought I had a deep empathy and understanding for the people around me, even before this podcast. And I think it's just been more intensified now that anybody I'm walking beside, anyone frustrated, anyone happy, anyone, just anyone hurts, and it sucks. And it doesn't matter if they're a billionaire, and it doesn't matter if they're homeless. The pain is real, and they're on their journey, and it will change. I don't know how. I just know sometimes we have to keep putting one foot in front of the other. So really, at the end of the day, it's to share the struggle. It's to show that we can have empathy and understanding, and it's to give hope. It's to give hope that when you're in the depths of despair, you can keep going and it will get better.
I love that. I definitely love that. And then, what we just touched on a little bit before, let's go into that a little bit, having someone there with that lived experience,
Yeah. I think when someone is willing to say, this is who I am, the worst part of me,
mm-hmm.
and for someone else to go, yeah, that's okay. I worried about the gal that I interviewed for that podcast. May she's so fantastic, and she's such a soft spirit that one of my concerns was, man, I really hope she has the strength for the trolls, because I think there are going to be some trolls that are going to be mean to her for letting the world know that she did this, and she acknowledged that she became the perpetrator. And I think that's really hard and extremely brave. The people that come on your podcast, the people that come on my podcast, and they tell that deep, sorrowful story,
mm-hmm.
Is they're courageous and brave to me.
Yes.
And anyone willing to share that to me is just, I don't know. I just have no words except for just pure love for the fact that they're willing to say, yeah, I was messed up too. Yeah. I've been there. I've been angry. I've been sad. I've been on my knees crying. It sucks. It sucks when you go there, and it's devastating, and you do have to grieve that process. And then there's that point, I'm not sure if it happened with you, where you understand it logically, but emotionally you're still not there. And there's like a disconnect. Yeah. Like with my hands and grieving the use of my hands. Yeah, I totally went there. It was not fun. What?
No, it's definitely not fun, because once you never know that you detach until it's too late. And I know that was for me, like, when my mother passed away, that everything hit back to back, so a little bit about my past, my son, and then my mother, then my grandmother passed away. When that all happened, I detached. So I was there, right? I was there mentally, but emotionally, I was so detached from everything that I almost scared myself. Once I realized how far I had gone, and at that time, I was already at that one final decision making moment, whether I'm going to live, and I don't know. I'm still working on the attachment part, but I've gotten a lot better to where I could see it. I just see it from different angles now. So it depends. I guess for me, it depends on what I'm doing at that moment. Like if I'm starting my grieving process over. So, I had to tell myself, let's not kid myself, like I'm going to grieve this for the rest of my life. What am I supposed to do? Right.
Yeah.
So when I get to that process and it starts, I honor it.
Yeah.
I just honor the process because now I'm starting to realize that every time it comes through, it's it's bringing pieces of me back and taking the pieces of me that don't belong away.
Yeah. It's sacred.
Right. It's a sacred feeling. So I am it becomes more of a relationship of understanding and connectiveness, not just with just the people around, just like yourself and everything else, but it's more connecting with myself and primarily reconnecting with my father.
Yeah.
Because through that I feel him the most. Through my worst moments, I hear him the clearest because in those moments, I believe he's comforted me. He's given me words of love and courage, and just showing me my strength.
Yeah. When you're talking about a father and hearing the words, my dad was not around. My mom and dad got divorced when I was really young, 6 or 8, something like that. But I didn't have a relationship with him. And in my 20s, actually, on my honeymoon, I got to go see him. And one of the things that he said to me that was probably the most healing thing he could have ever said was, "I'm so sorry I couldn't be the father you needed me to be.
Hmm.
And I love you." After that, that's when the healing started.
Yeah, those are deep
You know.
words right there. But what I was saying when I said father, I meant God.
Okay, well,
Well,
that's okay. I'm taking, but my
but
father's
the
up
same
there right
thing
now.
though. No, but the
No,
but
yeah.
the same thing because my father passed away as well. My father and my little brother passed away 10 years ago, and so but I remember when he as maybe no maybe a little bit longer. Time tends to blur in together after a while,
Yeah.
but I know it's
Yeah.
been some years. But the same similar conversation I had with my father before he passed away, because it took a while for us to get that relationship back. I was
Hmm.
always the son that was gone. When I left home, I had no intentions of coming back, none
Yeah.
whatsoever. And so I remember I left a relationship with my mother that was unfinished and a relationship with my father that was unfinished because my journey took me elsewhere. And I
Yeah.
don't think they really would have understood because I didn't understand. But
Yeah.
going back and reconnected with them, I'm glad I'd taken the journey. I'm glad I went back and we were starting to build that relationship again. I remember the last words he said to me was, no matter what happens, I'm going to always love you. And just remember those fishing trips and those talks that we used to have. There's knowledge in there that I believe that can help you along the way. And I remember the last words. He said, "I love you." And that was on a Saturday night. And I got the call Sunday night that he had passed away. So those conversations like that still resonate with me and everything. And my father, he had a disability as well. He had lost his he woke up paralyzed one day.
Oh.
Yeah. And no one
Huh.
could figure out why. Like he woke up and went to go get out of bed and his legs wasn't working.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And
And no
so
one could figure it out.
no one could figure it out. Now,
Wow.
being my father's son and being in Colorado, he was somewhere else. He's telling me these things, but I noticed his attitude behind it was so amazing. He goes, "You know what? They took away my legs, but I'm still moving. They just gave me wheels."
Yeah.
And I remember him telling me this, and I was like, "Is something wrong with you, Father? It's something wrong with you." And
Yeah.
he was like, "Well, think about it. I'm gonna put a little motor on here. You ain't gonna never be able to keep me at home."
Yeah, in his life, he got to walk and roll.
Right. Oh, that was good. That was real good. He did. He got the chance to rock and roll, but look at you. Like you see, I think God is amazing in that way, right? Like he takes away something and gives you something in return. You just got to figure out how to use it.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody in the tech industry, and they're like, "Yeah, things are moving so fast. Pretty soon, you're gonna get to have things are just gonna outpace and everything." And he made it seem like there was gonna be a fix for everything, and I'm thinking, "Gosh darn it, there can't be, because there's so much we don't know,
Mm-hmm.
so much that we don't know. That I'm okay if there's not a fix."
Yeah.
I don't need to have a robot body. I'm glad wheels exist, though.
This is very, very true, but I don't think the things that we go through in life are things that are meant to be fixed.
Yeah.
I think there are things that need to be rebuilt.
And different. They look different.
Right. Because it looks different. There's no fixing it, right? You just have to rebuild it. No matter, just like ourselves, right? You're going through this disorder, and it's taking you for a loop. But look at what you've done. You've rebuilt it and figured out how to administer it to other people, right? In a way to where you normalize these conversations, these situations, giving other people that are going through similar things hope. And letting them understand that, hey, this is not the last part. And I love that, because those stories are and can be someone else's survival guides. And I look at the same thing I do with my podcast with the men and the people I've had up there. Your story is going to help someone else. You just don't know who is going to help. So I love the concept of that.
It's so true. We never know. I jokingly say that by the time someone's interviewed, they've touched me. And then when we've edited, they've touched a caregiver. So by the time, before your episode's even posted, you've touched two people and given them insight into new ways of thinking, or maybe reminding them of other ways that they forgot about.
Yeah. There's always those hidden tools, those hidden little gems inside of those. That's why I love the rawness of the podcast, because it allows so much. And if a person is comfortable, oftentimes they open up a little bit more. And they start telling of all these other things, and I just sit back, and I think it's such a beautiful thing. I just want to get popcorn and just sit back and just eat. But then I don't know how people would take it, but it's like, this is the biggest compliment I can ever give you. I'm going to sit down, have some popcorn, and I'm just, hey, by all means, speak your truth, right? But it's so amazing, man. It's so amazing. So what's in the future for you?
That's a really great question. I just was appointed on the local Disability Advisory Commission. So that's been an interesting new learning curve. Okay. Again, can't take notes, so I'm still trying to figure out how that's going to work.
Okay.
And I think it's just continuing to move forward. I don't know exactly what it looks like. I am keeping my eyes out. I am looking and trying to figure out what it means and how it's going to work. And all the pieces haven't fallen into place yet, which is really odd. So for me, it's really odd, because if you can't tell just by my conversation, I am a little bit of a perfectionist, or even just seeing me, I don't know, but so even in this journey, it was a risk, a scary risk, to quote unquote jump off the cliff to start the podcast, and to start stepping out and trying to give back to the world what's so freely been given to me. And sometimes it doesn't feel like that in the midst of a journey. You feel like you're struggling to find every tool possible.
Oh yeah.
And but I really genuinely want people to have tools. I want them to be able to notice the beauty around them. I want them to remember to laugh, that it's super healthy to laugh. And to find joy in the midst of the sorrow. Like, how many times in your life were you in I mean, I don't know, I did it, right? You're in the midst of a struggle. And for whatever reason, there's this idea that that struggle has to encompass all of who you are every moment of that day. And you can't let go, because if you let go, then you're not being true to the struggle, right? Like, and yet there's joy that can be found in those moments. And it's okay, because some of these struggles are not fast. They're very slow. At least like with my hands, it was a very slow process. I thought there was going to be a fix. I thought this, every new medication we tried, every new injection we did, I always kept looking for that fix. And then I couldn't even be happy because there wasn't a fix. Well, maybe there's not supposed to be. And maybe that's okay. And guess what? I can smile and laugh when I'm in miserable pain. That's complex. And it's possible. And I think a lot of times we lock ourselves into, well, they're in miserable pain, therefore they can't find joy. Instead of, they're in miserable pain and man, they're going to do everything they can to find joy when they can, or when they're capable of seeing it. Does that make sense?
No, it does, because when you're going through something like that, it can definitely take your mindset in a different direction. And we both know this. When you're in the midst of that dark place, there's the emotions that you have to go through. You have to deal with your own mental health, all right, and which may not be in the right place. So now, we have two of the most powerful things that are working against us: our emotions and our minds. Yeah. So it's it's not unheard of, and I want to just let everybody know that these things are totally normal. Yeah. And don't be afraid to honor it. Don't be afraid to see what it's there for. Not everything is there to break you. I found out that when those things happen, you're in that dark place. It's okay to not be okay. Sometimes sit down, take a breath, practice your breathing. And once you can get a handle and you can slow some things down, begin to ask the hard questions. Why are you here?
Yeah, and I would venture, for me, I had to shift from like, why me? Because that was me.
I did the same. I mean, pretty much the same thing. Yeah, the victim, right?
The victim mentality of, oh, why me? This is always happening to me. Not, well, I don't know always, but why did I have to be the one that had this struggle? And then I learned, even in the last year, I want to say the last year or 2 years, to instead say, well, what's the purpose of this? Instead of why me? Okay, what's the purpose? And when I shift to what's the purpose, then I'm looking for the lesson in it. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying, woe is me. I'm the only one who's ever struggled type. Because I really think in my mind, when I went to the victim mode, mm-hmm. that was my belief that I'm the only one who's ever going to struggle. And I know that's not true. Mm-hmm. And yet it's still like we all go there. And another few questions that, really helped me, and they're actually from my kids' book by Daniel Amen. I think it's Captain Snout. And when those negative thoughts start coming in, am I sure? Am I 100% sure that's true? And then I can start looking for things that disprove it. And so just those little tips and tools made a huge difference. In fact, which I don't know why this just came to my mind, but during the midst of one of my biggest struggles, a girlfriend of mine told me about laughter yoga. So I learned about laughing, and I learned about making weird faces and laughing on purpose. Like, I think one of them I would do like
okay. right. I love that. I love that because I saw a picture of you on Facebook or either Instagram, one or the other. I can't remember where. And you do.
But see, it brought us out of the and so the caregiver that I had at the time, and we would like just out of nowhere make faces and start laughing, like purposeful laughing. And they actually have like, these, you can go on YouTube and find them where you purposefully laugh. And what's interesting is that it takes into account that breathing and all of that. I don't know. I think humor is really important, especially when struggling. But I don't think I could have said even a year ago, maybe even 2 years ago, yeah, I'm like T-Rex. I've got arm, like what I said at the beginning. But now I can see the humor in it. And I can be like, okay, that's okay. It took that journey, though, to get there.
And yes, yeah. I had to find humor in some crazy things, and people often look at me and go, wow, how did you do that? I go, honestly, if you can find a memory that makes you laugh, right? So, and I say that because I experienced that loss of a child, right? Hardest thing you can ever imagine. And I wouldn't wish that on no one. But even as horrible as that is, I often remind myself of a story about the bees with him, right? So it's one of the memories I love sharing. So my son, we was up one Sunday morning, and he wanted to go outside, but his friends wasn't. I was very early in the morning. It was early into summer, so it's already starting to get hot. Now I could see my son looking out the window to see if anybody was outside, but I also see him looking at this blackberry bush that we had in front of the house, and it's starting to bloom. So the bees are going around. So as a male looking at a young male, I know what he's thinking. I'm going to go and play with the bees, right? So,
oh dear.
So he kept telling me, Dad, can I go outside? I said, no, not right now. Wait till your friends come outside. So he heard a voice from across the street, and he thought it was one of his friends. I knew what he was doing. He wanted to go outside and play with the bees, and I'm going to let him at this moment. So before he goes out there, I said, son, please don't play with the bees. They're going to sting you. They're going to sting you. So he goes out and he walks around the yard, and eventually, I can hear him screaming, Dad, Dad, he's running around. So I go to the door and I can see him running from the bees, and he sees me. So I close the door and I lock the door.
Oh dear.
And I tell him, because he comes to the door as the bees are chasing him, I say, keep running. There's no sense of both of us being stung. So you see what I mean? Like you could take something, anything is possible. You could take something as horrible as losing a child and having that memory that creates that laughter that comes back through. And it makes the walk that much more enjoyable.
Well, and that brings that joy into this moment too.
Uh-huh.
It's not lost.
Right. Just
It's
like
still
you
there.
sharing and making funny faces and stuff, because you caught me off guard about that one. And it forced a laugh in response. And I was just going, oh my God, this is awesome. Right.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. And that's what it's all about, showing the people that we talk to, the audiences that we're reaching, to show them that it's possible to have a smile on your face, even going through the things that we go through, because life is going to challenge you, but not.
Yeah.
It's the way you approach the challenge and the way that you perceive your challenge is what's going to be the outcome that you get. And I said, when it comes, have fun. You may be in a bad place, but find something positive to hold on to that you can help to give yourself that extra encouragement on those rough days, right?
Yeah.
Remind
and
yourself.
Respect the sacred journey.
Right. Respect your journey in general,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But honor your path, honor who you are, and honor your emotions that you're going through. And that's very important when we talk about self-care. So, I mean, I know now you practice a lot of self-care, right? What
Oh
are some
yeah.
of the things that I know because we all have to, and I think it's very important as people, as human beings, to practice these things. So, what are some of the things that you practice to keep yourself healthy mentally?
Yeah. So meditation.
Mhm.
I have a girlfriend of mine and we are gratitude partners. So I send her my gratitude every morning and she sends me hers.
Okay.
And that is really interesting, especially in, when you're, because gosh, I think it was a couple weeks ago, I went down, I got sick, I was miserable. My pain was bad. Everything was just bad.
Mm.
And it was really hard to be grateful in those moments, and I still had to practice it, and for some reason I had that heavy feeling too because some other things had happened and I was sad. And at first, it's I always get that thought in my mind, oh, I need to fight this, I need not to take care of myself. Well,
Mhm.
I also wasn't feeling good and I needed to just slow down. And I had to, I laid in bed and until I started getting my strength back from being sick on top of being sad, right? So there,
Yeah.
all those things were happening at the same time. And I just had, I had to respect it, respect the
Mhm.
sadness and surf it out. I remember talking to someone and saying, I know I don't like this heavy feeling. I think I just need to surf it out. This is what every, anyone I've ever talked to and all the reading I do about healing and emotions, this feeling will eventually come to an end. I've just got to surf it. And it was not fun. I did not like it. And it took me some time. Even when I started feeling better, I was like, "Oh, am I ever going to get back to normal?" Because it was still that little bit heavy.
Mhm.
And then, slowly but surely, I found myself coming out of those feelings, and it just happened. But I had to respect the journey and
Right.
feel it. That's the tough part, is allowing, for me anyway, allowing myself to feel those uncomfortable feelings or the unfun feelings because I
Mhm.
don't like them. I really love joy. I love laughter. I love, all those
Right.
the fun feelings. So I would say just as far as self-care, recognize when you need an extra, if bubble baths are your thing or salt baths are your thing and that helps you feel good when you're down, take it. Other times and try to listen because sometimes it's time to get up and get moving
Mhm.
instead of stay there. And you have to figure that out for yourself. It's not something someone else can tell you.
Mhm.
You know your body. And if you listen to your body or the feelings that your body gets when you're in different situations or you're thinking of different things, then you can start to figure out what your body's telling you. And so I say, listen, just really listen and honor that, and drink lots of water.
But that should be a given nonetheless, drinking some water, stay hydrated, because it's going to help you cry. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
but I like to tell people that anyway, drink lots of water because it's going to help you cry, right? Especially when
yeah.
people are stubborn. And, but then
And
they are,
chemically, tears. Yeah, I don't know if you know this. Chemically, tears. There is a real chemical reaction that happens in the brain, and it is a very cleansing process.
hmm
If they're coming, allow it.
yeah,
If you don't want a tissue from someone because you feel like it's going to stifle the tears, don't take it. No, wait until you're ready and then wipe your tears.
yeah, I totally
Don't let
agree.
someone else, yeah, don't let someone else determine your process
Yeah.
because it's your process. You know you best.
Exactly. And I think that's where a lot of people get kind of confused. They want to compare, you know. And it's good. It's okay to extract tools from other people's journeys, tools that can benefit you, and even some that you don't know too much about. Extract them anyway, right? And
Hmm.
you just never know. Those tools that don't fit you may work for someone else. And
Yeah.
I just think that's important. And yes, there is a great feeling that happens when you allow yourself to cry, when you allow those tears to come. Don't hold it back. And it took me a long time to get there too, right? Because the fight or flight kicks in. I've never been much of a runner, so the flight part never kicked in. So how do you? My question was always, how do you fight something you can't see?
Ooh, great question.
It's internal, right?
Yeah.
How do you fight something like that? Because a lot of the battles that we have are internal. People don't
Yeah.
see them. That's why people always assume that we're okay. Because on the outside, we portray the person who's doing okay. But on the inside, we have a silent battle. I mean, we talked about this. The battle is always in your mind. That's the worst part about the journey, is that you have to be able to distinguish between reality and your mind. Well, your mind is designed to keep us safe. So
Yeah.
the question for myself was, how do you fight something that you don't see? That
You
one right
know,
there blows. I mean, we figured it
that's
out, right? But it's kind of hard to put it in words.
yeah, part of me is as you're thinking, because I think we're still talking about those emotions we don't like,
Right.
right? Okay. Is thinking of putting an arm, like, that 2-year-old, if you will, that
Mhm.
falls, and walking up to them, helping them brush off, and then putting your arm around them and going, you can do this,
Mhm.
in the struggle. I think I have to think of myself as those feelings, if you will, those unfun feelings, those
Mhm.
uncomfortable feelings, in that I'm putting my arm around them and I'm loving them, and I'm saying, it's okay, we can do this. I got you.
I love that.
We're gonna make it. Yeah.
I
And
love
just
that.
loving that part of me, because it's so
Mhm.
easy to hate that part of me.
Well,
And
yeah.
it's easy.
It's real easy. Be like, you know what? And I just think that's just amazing because, wow. I hope no one else has to ever go to that spot. But if you do, um, you know, take something from this. Listen to what Angela is saying, then, because there's some little nuggets inside of there that I think that can help anybody out there struggling right now. Now, if you had some encouraging words for someone out there in a similar situation to yourself, what would they be?
It's a really great question. Oh, well, perception and perspective are the deciding factors which lead to choice. So figure out where you're standing.
Hmm.
And maybe it's at the beginning of the journey, and maybe you're in the crevice right now. And sometimes there's hills we walk up that we don't even realize we're walking up.
Mm-hmm.
And before you know it, you've crested the peak, and now you can see. So I think that a lot of times it won't feel like things are moving,
Mm-hmm.
and it won't feel like you're growing or learning. You probably are, though. And surround yourself with safe people. Let them support you. And if you're not sure what safe people are, there's a book that will help teach you called Safe People.
Love that.
I think it's just, and love yourself through those tough parts. That very last thing we talked about, put your arm around that hurt part of yourself and love it.
Yeah.
Give it the love that you would give your friend that was hurting in the same way. Give that to yourself.
I like that. Love yourself like you would love your hurt friend. I definitely like that. Because that's such a strong statement, because we as people, we tend to love other people harder than we love on ourselves. And I think a lot of times we just don't know how.
It's not something that's talked about.
No, it's definitely not something that's talked about. Now, how can people find your podcast?
We're on most platforms, so just look for Relatively Damaged by Damaged Parents, or they can go to the website www.damagedparents.com. And all the podcasts are on there with the transcripts and everything. So that's another great place. And I think that's about it for right now. I mean, we're on Facebook. Look for Damaged Parent. Actually, we're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. So just look for Damaged Parents, and that's where we post our episode when our episodes are being released and things like that. So
okay,
yeah.
Now, I just want to say, man, Angela, thank you for being on the show today and telling everybody about your journey and giving people hope and inspiration. You're such an amazing person, such a very amazing person. And everybody check out her episodes and reach out to her. See, and if you have a story, reach out to her as well. She has an amazing podcast. She's doing amazing things, and she's a wonderful person. And with that being said, I want to thank everybody for tuning in for another episode of Memories of Us. And you have any questions about Angela, I'll post the links down below and reach out to her and enjoy.
Thank you for all the continued support for Memories of Us podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We have new episodes every Tuesday. You can listen to Memories of Us podcast on all of your popular podcast platforms. Until next time, stay strong.